Hello, everybody. We're on the hour, 2 o'clock, just letting the participants in now. So we'll give a few minutes for everybody to join us. I don't know about you, but we've got a beautiful sunny spring day here. So yeah, it's very nice. I'm over the winter.
I'm not ready for the summer clothes yet, though.
Thanks for that reminder.
Yeah, elasticated. That's all I'm going to say. Elasticated.
Moo-moos.
Apparently, Marks and Spencers have made all their trousers with elasticated.
All their workwear is elasticated.
Yeah,
fantastic.
Yeah.
Is that a reasonable adjustment?
Oh, reasonable adjustment. Very funny, Tracy. Very good.
And I'm ahead of the curve. I've been wearing loose clothing for 2 years. I think the clothes getting tighter. Is that natural?
I think they shrink in the wash. They shrink in the wash for sure.
Yeah, it must be something to do with the atmospheric.
Yeah,
I mean, it is, because my BMI says I'm too short, not too fat.
Anyway, should we make a start? We'll just do a little bit of housekeeping. What is the housekeeping? Yes, today the session's being recorded and we'll be sending out the recording afterwards. We've got captioning by Interact Streamer, so you can see that as well. And a transcript will be sent out later. And we've got 3 panelists with us today. We've got our Microlink CEO, Nasser Siabi, and we have Helen de Breton, who is our Director of Corporate Solutions, and we have Tracy Abbott, who is our expert on accessible recruitment. So it should be quite an interesting session today and quite lively. We've also got a few questions for you. So it's a poll that Zoom facility that Zoom has. So we'll be asking a question on the screen, and then you'll be asked to choose the right question. And then afterwards, we'll see the percentages and see how many people got it right. So that's a new feature for this panel discussion today. So anyway, without any further ado, because we're 3 minutes past the hour, we will open with Nasser.
Greetings and hello to everyone, and a beautiful day. And thank you for joining us. Today's discussion is about how to become disability confident. And if you're on that journey, how to become better employers of disabled people. And really revolves around the workplace adjustment or reasonable adjustment, what kind of interventions disabled employees will need to be the best of themselves. This is really, we're trying to move away from legal compliance or CSR. It's all about how to make a workplace more inclusive and give every employee the opportunity to progress and to belong to their organization and help to contribute towards the prosperity of the company. Microlink was founded in 1992, so we are in our 30th year anniversary. Over the 3 decades, we've helped around 500,000 people in workplace and in higher education. And our work continues to accelerate. We now work in schools as well as universities and workplaces. And our real expertise comes into identifying the kind of barriers people face because of their condition. So we look at the impact of what a condition can do. And we have a range of clever technology solutions, as well as really expert knowledge on how to support disabled people or people with conditions that face challenges when they do their work. We have an impressive list of corporate clients, and some of them are multinational. So our operations reach out to other countries apart from UK. Next page. Well, start of the conversation always would be with the Equalities Act. Why do companies need to do this? This is really driven partly by the Equalities Act 2010. Essentially, it mandates companies to have an equal opportunity for every employee, regardless of the gender, sex, and health condition, so that they can participate and succeed in the workplace. Now, it's really legalistic in many aspects. You know, there's a definition of what is considered a person being disabled, any condition which is longer than 12 months and has a significant impact onto the day-to-day. But when you look at the health of the population as a whole, you might find with the aging population from one side and the fact that, you know, we all have occasional mishaps in life, whether it's an accident or whether it's even people who are like pregnant towards the latter part of their pregnancy, they will face challenges which are no different to a disabled person working in an office, for example. And obviously those challenges could be even participate in our digital and physical world. So going to a building, particularly now that we have a return back to work, a hybrid working, there'll be a lot of disabled people who would be completely disorientated because of the past 2 years. When they come back to work and the office space has changed, the environment has changed, how will you help them to actually adjust? So these are really holistic set of measures that you need to put in place in order to get the most out of your workforce. And of course, a lot of people will say, well, can I afford it? Well, the answer always is you can't afford not to do it, because the loss to the productivity, the absenteeism, attrition are going to be a major factor when you start competing in today's market, where there's a skills shortages. It'll be harder to recruit people, harder to retain people. So there's a lot of element of engagement, loyalty, and obviously not to mention a lot of legal challenges that you might face if you don't do the right thing. It might sound like a minefield, but actually, if you look at the core way to do this is to be a good, smart businessman. How can you get more out of your workforce? What tools do they need to do their job better? And we're hoping today we can actually help you discover some of the ways of doing it, and also to bust some of the myths about disability and how impractical it is to do. Everyone can do it. And in fact, you might be doing it already without realizing it. So let's go through that. Of course, before we start, I just want a very quick breakdown of the kind of conditions people don't realize that it is associated with disability. And those are things such as like HIV, cancer, multiple sclerosis, musculoskeletal pain, visual impairment, hearing loss, heart disease, obesity, asthma, dyslexia, or you name it. It's a big spectrum. And quite frankly, at a time where people are struggling with other pressures of life, the last thing you want to is to have them to come to work and not be their full self, because work is a refuge for a lot of people to be able to get away from the problems of life and feel they're contributing. And if you give them the right environment, the right support, then you get more out of those people at a time where obviously you want to retain every employee. So without much delay, I would like to actually get Anna to do our first survey question.
Yeah, the first survey question is, should come up. How many millions of people have a disability in the United Kingdom? 5 million, 9 million, or 13 million? Answers as quick as you can. I'll do the countdown. I can't remember the tune. I did listen to Countdown the other day, but I've forgotten the tune. So could you answer it as fast as you can?
I think everyone answered now.
Brilliant. Thank you, Azadeh.
Oh no, still answering.
Okay, just a couple more seconds. When are we going to give the answers to?
I'm going to end the poll now.
Okay.
Yeah, when are we going to reveal the answers? At the end, or?
No,
I can tell you now.
Yes, can you?
4% answered 5 million, 27% answered 9 million, and 68% answered 13 million.
Well, and the right answer is
13 million.
yes.
A lot of people.
Now, that's a
Considering
lot
we've only
of
got
people.
68 million in the country.
So just imagine 13 million people working in employment and not being as productive as they can be. And we will go into some data to show you how much improvement you can get out of people once you give them an adjustment in the workplace. That's to remove the barriers they face. Very simple interventions, but it will incredibly productive in terms of doubling somebody's output. So that's number one question out of the way. Do we need to ask the second question, or should we wait for the?
Well, we can. Yes, we can do the next question, which is, how many people develop a disability during their working life? Azadeh, can you put the poll up? So how many people develop a disability during their working life? 45%, 62%, or 80% plus? I still can't do the countdown noise, but I can't remember what it is. Something like that.
Okay, we're getting stable answers almost. So, Azadeh, do you want to do that one as well?
Yes.
Oh, we had a question from Hannah. Does this only include people who identify as disabled?
No, this is the government.
Which means it does, actually. It means that there is a little tick box that when you're filling out your censor, the government reports back that sadly, yeah, is people that identify as disabled. So actually, these numbers are way less than in actuality. So it's
absolutely, that's the official stats from ONS. However, if you ask the right question, you will discover there are more people with disabilities that they don't realize. In fact, they won't recognize themselves as disabled because they think I'm just getting on with my life, so I don't need to consider myself as disabled. However, under the description of the legal, in order to qualify to be disabled, then you could find the numbers would be higher. So we have 3 answers. Which one is the correct answer, Azadeh?
80% plus is actually around 83% at the moment.
Most of the people answered 62%, and 28% answered 45%, and 20% only answered 80 plus.
So the official line is only 15% of disabled people were born with disabilities. The rest acquired it throughout their lives. And quite, so whether that was the 62% or 80%, it depends when you start considering disability, but vast majority while they were working. So it would be 80%. That's what is being quoted officially. And that is a huge number. So if anyone thought that they don't have declaration disclosure, that means they don't have many disabled people, they should think twice, because if 85% of disabilities are developed while people are during their working lives, and we have 13 million people declared disability through their surveys, and obviously it stands to logic that you have quite a lot of disabled people working in your organization. It's not a scary subject. It means they're already working. It means you know how to manage them, except you could do much better if you knew how.
Sorry, Nas. Oh, just have one question. Sharon Fawcett. Oh, Helen's answered it. Thank you, Helen. Efficiency.
So that's it. That's 2 questions, which is really very much like testing your knowledge about disability. And sometimes it's an eye opener. Most people don't realize it is far more prevalent than we're led to believe. Anyway, that's that side. Do you want to do the next one, or shall we move on to the?
Oh, I'll wait a little bit. Let Helen start talking about.
Of course. So I'll just pass it to Helen. Helen is the director of our client solutions, and she deals with the workplace adjustment for our major corporation clients. Helen?
Hello, I do. And actually, just to add to your stats, 1 in 6 people will lose their job within a year of becoming disabled. And I think that really puts a spotlight on the problem here. And while many companies quite rightly put an emphasis on the recruitment of people with disabilities, which is an important thing, as Tracy's going to go into, my passion is about how we keep those people in the workplace, because it's all very well getting somebody into the workplace, but if they have a bad experience, it can shatter their confidence, and then it can really create problems for them moving on in life. So I think that retention of people is massively important, and at the center of retention is workplace adjustments. And we don't call it reasonable adjustments anymore. We've kind of got away from that language, but workplace adjustments are the tools that people need to do their jobs. And it's not necessarily just assistive hardware, assistive software, it can be services too. Coping strategies, training for departments, training for line managers, anything that is going to enable that employee to thrive, and what we're going to do, what they enable them to do their best at their job. Sadly, the diagram in front of you, and a few of you may have seen this before, this is what we call our chaos diagram. And for anybody who's got vision loss, it's a chaotic workflow diagram showing all of the players in the game that somebody with a disability needs to jump through in order to get their adjustments. And this is often our starting point with companies. The journey often takes people between 3 and 6 months to get adjustments. Part of that is down to the wait in access to work, but we'd also encourage people to look at provision of adjustments without access to work, and use access to work for the high spend adjustments, not for the run of the mill stuff, which should be delivered really quickly. I think if the problems start with this chaos diagram, where an employee doesn't know where to go, who do they approach? They've got a need, they know they've got a need, maybe they're not comfortable in disclosing, but where do they go first of all? Does their line manager understand it? Do they have a good relationship with their line manager? Hopefully, yes. But in reality, we know that's not always the case. Do they go to the health and safety? Do they go to HR? HR is sort of linked with performance. Maybe they don't feel so comfortable going that way. Where do they go first? Once they have navigated the where to go first, getting an assessment, especially if people use access to work, is not the tricky bit. Getting the assessment generally is where the troubles start for an organization. It's when you get that assessment report back and the employee's got hold of it and they say, what next? Okay, where do we procure this stuff from? Do your IT department know how to set assistive software up? Does anybody know how to train that person on that software? What if that assistive software doesn't work? It's not compatible with your company's systems. Where do we obtain that chair, that footrest, that item from? Does it all come together, or do you get drip fed little bits and pieces? So, your entire adjustment isn't kind of completed until several weeks, months later. I think the IT people inside companies, the purchasing people, the health and safety people, they're often on the kind of coal face with this, and then they're finding it difficult to help employees, and employees are having to navigate this all by themselves or with their line manager. Because of this kind of diagram, it's often the fact that companies are spending quite a lot on workplace adjustments. They just don't know it. It's hidden inside budgets. It's hidden inside health and safety. It's hidden inside occupational health. It's hidden inside HR. It can be all through the organization. The problem with that is that to convince the powers that be that a workplace adjustment program needs to be put in place and this support needs to be put in place, it kind of comes as a bit of a shock to them when they realize when they can't lay their hands on any of the current spend to make decisions about moving forward, strategic decisions. One of the other challenges within companies is the inconsistency between recommendations made by assessors. And again, this is no disrespect to access to work, because they're there for the individual. But as an example, you could have multiple people assessed in the same organization with different outcomes, similar disabilities, which then becomes tricky for the company to support. So if you can go to the next slide, Azadeh. So what we did about 11 years ago, we took our experience from working within the higher education industry. We had a lot of knowledge about assistive technology. We had a lot of support capabilities around disability, and we moved that into the corporate workplace. We started off with Lloyds Banking Group, and we produced a case study from that, which went on to form the best practice approach to workplace adjustments. The kind of tenet of this service is that it's a single point of contact. It's a single place where employees can go, where line managers can go, where recruiters can go to get the advice and information and adjustments they need. Once we have received a referral, we then carry out a consultation with an employee, and that is really important linchpin because it decides on the support pathway that person is going to go down next. So sometimes that may involve signposting within the organisation. Sometimes it will involve the provision of products and services without the need for assessment. And sometimes it will involve getting a suitably qualified assessor in. The assessors should all be pan-disability. That means you shouldn't need to go one way for ergonomic and one way for assistive technology. It should all be handled within one visit. The assessment produces a recommended list of products and services, and we work with organisations to produce a catalogue that the assessors select from. All of that work is done up front, and that enables the assessors to pick from approved products that are suitable for the business, that are compatible to the organisation, and that, as a day, presentation's just disappeared. I don't know if it has on everyone. There you go. And that can work for the employee. We often go through cost approval routes or approval routes with the company to make sure things are in line with their budgets. And then the most important thing is we work to implement the adjustments for the person. So that is us liaising with IT, us liaising with health and safety, us liaising with the facilities, because workplace adjustments span so many stakeholders within an organisation. So if you have somebody with arthritis and dyslexia, you're needing input from IT for the software, you need facilities maybe for a desk rising, you need health and safety essentially to sort out the ergonomic, the chair kind of thing. And there's all of these stakeholders make it a real lengthy process for the individual to get through, and quite confusing as well for the internal stakeholders who probably don't know exactly what they're talking about in terms of disability all the time. I might add, some are brilliant. As a day, presentation's gone again. I don't know what's going on there. So this colourful worm that I'm putting on the screen, this is the customer journey that somebody goes through when we provide them with workplace adjustments. The average time taken for this adjustment journey is about 14.2 days. And that's from start to finish. So we're from referral to review. We're trying to cut down that time more and more because this is stopping a person working, essentially, in the most critical of instances. So it's so important that everything's joined up. The other thing that is really massively important through this is every time we consult with an employee, we're also consulting with their line manager separately. Line manager education is I can't overestimate the importance of it. It's massively important, and it can make or break the way that an employee feels about their job role and whether they stay in the organisation. So line managers are guided through this process. We answer their questions, we give them advice on the disability, we give them advice on the adjustments that are being provided, and separately we're given the employee advice on how to have those discussions, how to get the best out of the recommendations that are made. Again, I go back to the fact that this isn't just hardware and software, this is also services like coping strategies, co-coaching for line managers and employees with neurodivergent workforce, so they can put a coach in the middle of that and make really sensible recommendations for how the two parties work together. So there's a whole remit of these kind of services that we're always adding to. As soon as we find another great service, we put it in there. At the moment, we're looking quite a lot at menopause, which as far as I'm concerned, shares most of the same traits as long COVID, as far as I can see. So we're looking at specialist menopause support off the back of adjustments. So this is an always growing catalogue, and there's a lot of innovation that goes into this catalogue. And it's important that companies stay abreast of the changes in the assistive technology and disability industry. So, and that does mean that there does need to be a process owner inside the organisation, somebody who owns workplace adjustments, who can be, in charge of the governance, of the control, of the speed, of the contractual processes around it. So that's massively important. As a data, want to flip the next?
Would you like me to ask another question?
Yeah, go for it.
Is everybody ready? Oh, we've jumped as a day. We've jumped a couple of pages. Go back, go back, go back, go back. Yeah, this one. That's it. That one. Yeah. So, and the next question is number 3 as a day on the list. So tell us, what do you think the percentage is of your workforce that actually has a disability? Is it 5%, 10%, or 20%? I won't make the silly noise again. I'm over it. So what do you think? Tell us what percentage of your workforce has a disability. And we know this for sure because we've analysed all our data from all our clients. And so we know for sure the percentage because we've got the data and the evidence. So is everybody chosen?
I think so, yes.
Yeah. So what are the results as today?
So 15% answered 5,
Yeah.
28% answered 10, and 57% answered 20%. So.
And the answer is 20% of your workforce. So it's more than you think. And then can we ask another question? Can we ask the 4th question as well? Because it works alongside where Helen's going to go next. So what do you see as the main challenge to implementing a workplace adjustment program in your organization? Is it financial, lack of understanding, no buy-in from the top, all 3, or something else? Oh, questions disappeared as a day. It's got a mind of its own today.
I don't know what's happening today.
Oh.
I think everyone stopped now.
That's because the question's gone.
Yeah, the questions disappeared. We can't see it on the screen.
I can see it.
Oh, you can see it.
Yeah,
Okay, maybe it's
so
just us.
we have 7% said financial, 15% lack of understanding, 7% no buy-in from the top, and 63% all 3 of the factors, and 7% other. So that's the overwhelming answer.
Can we put it back up, because lots of people in the chat are saying that it disappeared before they could answer? There we go.
There you go.
Can anybody answer?
No,
Again?
that's you can't answer that. That's the results, Anna.
Oh, so we can't go back and add any more because a couple of people didn't get to answer it. But anyway.
No, we can't do it again. Sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay. So Helen, please continue.
Data. Part of the reason we were asking that question previously, which some of you didn't get the chance to answer, is because of the lack of data within companies. And I can see some of you on the chat are saying that companies don't collect this sort of data to form this kind of business case, and you're dead right, they don't. And when they try to collect it, often the wrong questions are asked. So the data that comes back doesn't really help anyone. When a person goes through our process, we capture about 600 fields of information. That information has gone on to form a lot of the white papers and case studies that we've worked with and NASA works with government. It's also important that when an adjustment is reviewed, that you're capturing data about how successful that adjustment has been. So the idea behind this data is that you have pre-adjustment and post-adjustment metrics. When you get those 2 things, then you can start proving the business case, because you've got a return on investment. You can clearly see the reduction in absence, which can be up to 76% directly due to adjustments supplied. And you can also see things like increase in productivity, improvement in relationships. So as you move through a process and capture data from individuals, you can start making a really powerful business case that those upper echelons in the top, they need to sit up and listen. This is just a sample of some of the data. So when we ask people about their absence, the question we're asking is, how much condition-related absence have you directly had in the last 12 months? And as you can see with this data set, back condition is always the highest generally in any company. But mental health is following very closely behind it at the cost to the business for far less people as well. Often mental health can be linked with pain, linked with conditions, linked with stress and anxiety for people who have neurodivergent conditions, things like dyslexia, dyspraxia. We once did a data set which looked at the levels of high absenteeism within the dyslexic workforce. And the cause of that was actually often due to change of job role, change of line manager, change of location, where it hadn't quite been handled correctly for the end user. And they've gone from either a line manager that really understood it to a line manager that doesn't, or they're unsure how to take their adjustments with them into the new position, all of those kind of things. And then it spirals, and then the person ends up taking time off sick, you know, and is anxious and is stressed out for the whole thing. So this kind of data sets just shows you the costs related to absence and the costs related to each condition. And yeah, we'd strongly suggest that if you're not measuring things now, the advice I would give people is, if you can start to look at how long an average case takes, if you can start to try and understand people's journeys within the organization, you know, if we gave you an employee and we said, this employee has got arthritis and a visual impairment, what do they do next? Where do they go to? What's their journey like? What's their experience like within the organization? How quickly do they get seen to? And that kind of helps to crystallize and focus people a bit when you're talking about workplace adjustments, you know, to use a real case scenario to explain it to people that don't get it within the organization.
Helen, mentioned back pain and mental health as two of the biggest, largest contributors to absenteeism. The data was collected 3 years before the COVID. So you could imagine the numbers would be absolutely astronomical now, because we know from research that the number of people complaining about musculoskeletal pain has gone up by 70% since before COVID. And mental health is on a vertical increase in terms of numbers. So these are two important issues that every employer should be aware of, because you'll be losing quite a lot of working hours.
Just touching on long COVID, the kinds of things that we are seeing is a lot of anxiety about returning to the office, a lot of anxiety about traveling to the office, PTSD from people who've either gone through COVID or have had families go through COVID is a very real thing. Long COVID and the adjustments that can be provided for people that have had long COVID. Some of those actually can work out really brilliantly as coping strategies, because the brain fog people are experiencing and the fatigue with long COVID are really playing havoc on workforces now. So I think this kind of whole area of return to work and hybrid working is, I don't think we've found the answers yet. I think it's going to be another few months in the making before things settle down into what was called the new normal, so to speak. So I think hopefully the people on this call are coming from an audience where they understand and recognise the importance of hiring people with disabilities, retaining people with disabilities. We think that, actually, that's a really good question that Amanda's just asked. No, I don't, Amanda, but I think they should take invisible disabilities more seriously now. I think COVID has, in a way, and you say this, Nasa, don't you, disabled us all. You know, we've all become disabled through COVID. We're all having to have adjustments at home. We're all needing workplace adjustments. So from that respect, yes. But whether it's gonna that knowledge is gonna go over into, you know, dyslexia, autism, other bipolar, I don't know yet. We'll have to watch and wait.
Well, it has helped some groups of the population who otherwise would find it difficult to go to workplaces. Autistic people, for example, they can quite happily do their work from home and do it extremely well if they are given the opportunity. So yes, the COVID has opened our minds to the possibilities of actually people working from a location other than the workplace and still be as effective. So the hybrid working and remote working has been one positive outcome of the COVID.
Yeah, but I think along with that, choice is massively important. So a lot of companies are going through this. Well, you work in the office 1 day a week, you work there 2 days a week, you work here 3 days a week. Okay, so where do your adjustments need to go? And the answer sometimes is, well, all three, but also there are things that can be made that are mobile. And I think companies have got to be giving the same choices to their disabled workforce that they do to everyone else about working from home or working in the office. I think that's really important.
Dorothy's comment that adjustments made for autistic people will benefit everyone, that is really the true principle of inclusive design. So you are really doing things in a much more sensible way, and not only the cohorts who need it benefit, also the general population will also benefit in a way. So that's really very much down to being smart in your business. There's nothing
but we say that about everything now, so don't we? Like, if you get it right for the disabled employees, you get it right for everyone. And that's with accessibility, with design of services, with designs of documents, with designs of recruitment processes, with designs of buildings. If they could just flip it on their head and look at that first, then I think everything else would be much, much easier. So just to round up on my little section before I hand over to Trace, it's a no-brainer for companies. It really is. It's an emergent area. Still, there's a lot of misunderstanding out there that we're battling through every day. But it is a no-brainer. It's not a spend, it's an investment. For every pound you put into something like a workplace adjustment program, you're going to get twice as much back. And we see that again and again. It's not just the right thing to do. Well, it is the right thing to do, but it's also, they've got to do it. It's legally, companies have got to do this and got to step up and take it seriously. In the public sector, the new legislation around accessibility, massively important. So that means public sector, that all of your websites have got to be accessible, all your systems have got to be accessible, and all your legacy documents and legacy systems have got to be accessible. Massive undertaking for organizations. So we've been doing work on that, haven't we?
Yeah, of course. And Cara made a comment about working from home, obviously has made the condition musculoskeletal worse, because people are really working in a very unhealthy work environment, ironing boards and kitchen tables, which is not really ideal for long hours of meetings, and people are working longer hours as well. So you've really got to take steps to look after the health of your workforce, otherwise you lose them. And when Helen says you get £2 for every pound you spend, that doesn't even include the cost of recruitment if you lose your, your workforce, the talent you really need at the moment. The cost of replacing a person in a banking sector is upward of £30,000–40,000. How many adjustments do you have to make in order to actually justify that, stop losing one person? And Helen didn't go into the details of the cost. The average cost of equipment for an adjustment is less than £200–300. That's really as low.
There's a lot of it's common sense, actually. A lot of
absolutely.
It's common sense, education, and support. Carly, you've mentioned about ways to adjust workplaces apart from accessible lifts. There are loads of ways. So let's give you a few. High contrast strips around doorways so people with visual impairments can see them. High contrast and stairs. We see a lot of stairs, which are beautiful glass stairs that people who've got vision loss can't actually navigate or get down. Signage in appropriate places, which contrasts with the background appropriately. There are so many ways that you can address accessibility in buildings, which is really quite cost effective. You don't need to knock the whole thing down and start again. And for those of us who work in, well, we don't, but listed buildings like those people at the Bank of England who I know have a challenge with this, or in the House of Lords or the House of Parliament, there are some easy low-hanging fruit that you can do to make it a bit more accessible for certain people. There's always things that can be done. So accessibility in buildings is, and you're right, ties in with fire safety too. There's so many cost-effective, easy things to do. One of our colleagues has a daughter who's got vision loss, who's registered blind, and when being shown around her new school, the first thing she did was walk straight into a pillar outside of the classroom, because the pillow is the same as the background. So, you know, just strips on that would have helped. So there are lots of things you can do for that. I think we're probably doing a webinar on that at some point. But Azadeh, next slide, Azadeh. And I think I'm handing over to Tracy. So
and before we do, before Tracy goes, there was one more question, but it's kind of more like a were you paying attention, audience, to what Helen said question. So can we put number 5 up, Azadeh, before Tracy starts? So what are the most critical aspects or functions you need internally in order to support disabled staff? There was a list that Helen went over. So is it single point of contact or process owner, stakeholder management, an approved catalogue, all free, or other? Vote now. Okay, I'll do the funny sound again because it kind of entertains me. Making Tracy laugh anyway.
It's like you're playing the countdown tune backwards. If it starts doing some kind of satanic
I'm playing those last 3 seconds.
Yes.
Because I can't sing the whole tune.
So I think we've reached the overwhelming answer of all 3, and that's the right answer.
That's the right answer. Well done, audience. You're paying attention. Very, very good. So, okay. Tracy, all yours.
I don't really know how I can follow after that, quite frankly. Let's start with the disability confidence thing on here. Part of what we talk about at Microlink with our clients is, are you part of the Disability Confident campaign that's run by the DWP, the marvellous Amanda Wadsworth? It's a very, very straightforward journey for individuals to get on and start. There's 3 different levels. We support other companies in achieving that because it's all around the journey that we're all on, right across the intersectional piece, not just disability, to help people get into business and stay in. Looking at attracting a talent, you need to be able to show, there needs to be some sort of visual effect on your website to show that you welcome people of difference, you welcome people with disabilities, you ask if they have a long-term health condition or a disability and what would make them perform the best in interview. And I've spoken about this on previous webinars, but if you've got a visible workplace adjustment scheme, it's a really nice way of signalling that you truly do welcome people of difference into your business. If I could have the next slide, please, Azadeh. Okay, so again, I've talked about this at length, but I love talking about it. It's really important. The process has to be fully accessible. You have to look at whether or not the PDFs you're sending out are accessible to screen readers. You have to look at your recruiters being trained properly to make adjustments to welcome people of difference. You have to ideally have done the interview and line manager training with your recruiters and your line managers so that they feel comfortable and confident. Look at setting up a little toolkit for your recruiters so that when you go back to face-to-face interviews, which some people have done, and you have a candidate that walks in and says, oh, by the way, I forgot to mention I'm visually impaired, or I need a BSL interpreter, or I need extra time for a test because I'm dyslexic, that your recruiters don't go running from the building, that they know what they need to do, they know who they need to call, and that it's all set up with your IT teams, so there's no nasty surprises. Please carry the information forward of the adjustments, not the disability. I can't really comment on that strongly enough. You mustn't talk about disability. This has got nothing to do with it. It's how your disability impacts on your day-to-day work and how you do an interview. And I mean, that there are instances where if you've got to do critical reasoning as part of a role, it might not be appropriate to give you extra time. But for the rest of the adjustments you're going to be asked for, don't look at whether or not they're reasonable, just make the adjustments. Make a note, and when you're putting them through the onboarding process, make sure that that tags in and follows through directly into what Helen's been talking about, the workplace adjustments. So it should be seamless. So when individuals come to you, if it is a high cost expense, then go to Access to Work. We can actually help you recruit the funding from Access to Work, but go to Access to Work, get it in place for the day the person starts is ideal. We've all been in a situation where the MD or CEO have gone out, met somebody at an event who's been disabled and gone, oh my God, you're amazing, you're inspirational, I want to employ you. They've brought them into the office and forgotten to tell anybody they need adjustments. That never ends well. So talking of never ending well, we've got the Great Resignation we're in the midst of. A lot of people are very disabled and non-disabled, very reluctant to go back into the office. And Helen again mentioned about PTSD and anxiety around travel, getting on public transport. But the reality is that people have learned to enjoy their time working from home. They've got their offices set up. It's quite interesting, a lot of the webinars that Helen and I have been on recently, we can see individuals actually still sitting on their sofas with a laptop on their laps, which is not an adjustment. You need to kind of get this sorted. I mean, I'm here with my ergo chair and my riser desk, and it's fabulous. I can work all day really comfortably. The attrition rate of individuals who have not had adjustments made is getting higher and higher. And unfortunately, it's one of those hidden costs. Companies don't realize that a lot of the individuals that they are losing because they're either being forced back into the office or they've not had adjustments made that match the ones they had in the office pre-pandemic. So as NASA mentioned, the attrition costs are really high for any business, and 40,000 is actually underestimating at NASA. It's actually closer to £150,000, depending on the level of person within an organization. You're losing all the knowledge IP that they've got. You're potentially ruining a team if they're moving on, and recruitment costs are going up and salary costs are going up. So what we would like always to advise companies is look at being the most inclusive you can be. Make sure that you involve, if you've got an ERG or an employers resource group, that you involve the disabled colleagues in how they would like the environment to be set up for them. Work with people like ourselves, with Microlink, to look at making sure that you've got a good workplace assessment set up, and really be aware of the environment that you're asking people to work in. It's not business as usual anymore. Business as usual went away with the advent of COVID, and we've got a real opportunity now to rebuild in an environment that helps everybody achieve their best. And wouldn't that be wonderful? So if we can go to the next slide, I'm not sure if I have none. There we go. BDF, Business Disability Forum. For those of you who aren't aware of BDF, fantastic organization, a charity that helps you with a lot of policies and procedures. They're all about the how, whereas Microlink, I think it's fair to say we're all about the doing of the how. So you can get advice from BDF and come to us and we'll actually make it happen. Purple Space, fantastic outfit, again, on a global basis for an employee resource group. Make sure when you're doing your social media that you've got stories about colleagues. I've seen some great ones on LinkedIn recently, where people are talking openly about being disabled or being people of difference, which is wonderful to see. It really goes down well because it's more a reflection of who the company is, and people are able to bring their authentic selves to work. Unfortunately, my authentic self includes two little Dachshunds who are really noisy in the background, so I apologize about that. Train your recruiters and line managers so that they know what they're doing around adjustments. Bear with me 1 second. Make sure that they understand intersectional recruitment so that they can actually understand if somebody is Jewish and disabled, or black and disabled, or gay and disabled, non-binary, whatever it might be. Just make sure that they have the confidence to deal with it. And if they don't know how to deal with it, that they know who they can pick up the phone to. So give them permission to do what's right. And that goes back to looking at the policies and procedures so that individuals can read up and go, oh yes, that's okay. We've already had that cleared. I can go ahead and do that. And set up strong workplace adjustment process. It's kind of what we've been talking about for this hour, is it's really, really important that you have a process in place. It doesn't have to be all singing or dancing. You don't have to have worked out all the kinks involved in setting it up. That's kind of what our job is. But the point is set out with the intent to do the right by the staff that you've got working with you. Set out to do right by your clients and your colleagues and the people that you're looking to recruit. And we're going to make the world a much better place, aren't we, team?
We are.
Yeah,
Absolutely. And
I like that you involve dogs. Yes, my dogs.
It was funny. It was very funny. Thank you. So now, NASA,
Yeah.
can we go to the, yep, we're going to talk about access to work.
Well, it's
And
an
that's
important, it's a
NASA's
very,
thing.
right, this is a very important subject because I'm sure most of the people on this webinar have experienced using access to work, and some companies rely on access to work. And it's not a bad thing, it's a great scheme, fantastic support for disabled employees. But it doesn't always work well for every organization of different sizes, partly because access to work is only one component of what Helen already has shown you in that worm diagram, where you need the kind of identifying what the problem and the impact is. You need to supply the equipment and you need to coordinate the implementation. So where access to work is brilliant is helps you to identify the kind of impact and what solution you need, and allocates you funding to go and purchase those equipment. But when it falls short, and it's not because of access to work, it's really the responsibility of the employers to do the implementation. And it doesn't always happen. Partly, and there are complex reasons why it doesn't happen. And Helen mentioned several of them, like your IT department may not allow you to put take any hardware or any software into the organization unless it's gone through the governance. And that's becoming increasingly difficult to do because the softwares are increasing in numbers and they're being updated all the time, and companies can't keep up. So even if you get access to work assessment, have a list of products you need to purchase, assuming your procurement department would be happy to go and buy from random companies, then you'll have the bigger issue of who is going to help to put it in place. And line managers don't really know where to begin. IT departments quite rightly would say, sorry, we can't have those because we haven't really worked with them. We don't know whether they will cause a problem for our system. And facilities will say, I can't really allow that kind of furniture into the building. All that stuff will actually end up having no solution. So access to work should be used, I would say, wisely. It's incredibly important to use it where you have support workers. If you have a deaf employee who needs a BSL interpreter, for example, or a person with physical mobility disability who requires a personal assistant, or somebody who is blind who requires very expensive equipment for a Braille device as well as scripting. For everything else I mentioned earlier, the cost of the actual adjustment could be less than £200-300. Verity asked the question, where is that data come from? That partly came from our case study that Helen mentioned earlier. Doing several thousand cases, we broke down the cost of the actual assessment, the equipment, the case management. So the equipment pretty much sits into that range of £200-300. Of course, in the past 5 years, technology is advanced, and Microsoft has introduced incredible amount of assistive technology into their operating system. So you could get a lot of the softwares that you normally have to buy, third-party software, is actually now available to you free of charge. So if you look at the solutions available, you might be able to
NASA.
help. But yes.
Ali has put in the chat a really interesting thing, which I know we've discussed before, about how access to work is affecting civil servants because they can no longer apply for access to work. Yes, it is true, Ali.
Very true. And that's the problem with again, one of the problems with access to work. Again, I don't say it's a problem with access to work, but it's the nature of the way the scheme works. They will provide what an employee with disability needs. Here's a list of things you need. It's not their job to actually tell the employers, well, you can do away with some of the other ones if it doesn't work for you. So if you get a report from Access to Work assessor, I guess the employer is under a legal obligation to make sure it's implemented. That can be a legal risk for a lot of employees, hence they don't use it as often as one would think. We have quite a large number of clients. Most of them don't use Access to Work for mundane things that cost less than around £1,500, which is vast majority, 90% of the cases we do for them falls well below that threshold. So hence they don't really feel it's worthwhile. For a small company, it is absolutely important they use Access to Work because it pays 100% of it They don't have the same governance compliance issues as the large companies. So any recommendation could be implemented very quickly. But there you need awareness among the employers, line managers, the HR, to make sure that the process is very quick, because it sometimes can fall through the cracks and an employee could be waiting for months to get an adjustment. Overall, schemes like Access to Work are there as a safety net for employers to employ disabled people. But if you look at all the benefits that we went through earlier, employers would say, well, if I'm going to get the benefit, there's no need to apply for £1,000 contribution from Access to Work. If it's done correctly, the average cost from our case study is around about £800 for a large organization. For a small company is different, but for a large organization is less than £1,000.
And that's with everything, assessment,
right.
Case management,
Absolutely.
reviews, everything.
Fully managed end-to-end case, it's a full solution, less than £1,000. Now, if you have £1,000 to turn around an employee's productivity and reduce their absenteeism by about 80%, then I'm not sure if you need more justification than that. So we think you should really think carefully of how to get the solution as quickly as possible and in a very timely fashion. The right intervention at the right time will save you money, will save your employees from being off work and, God forbid, leaving the organization, and then you have to go and recruit after them. I think there's a lot we can say about Access to Work, but for the time being, there are some delays because of the COVID situations in Access to Work assigning an advisor. We were hoping to have an Access to Work colleague here today to explain some of the changes they're bringing about, but we will leave that for the next session. I think they were very busy. They couldn't accept the invitation for here, but we're going to schedule one for Access to Work DWP.
NASA, what do you think, if the civil service can't use Access to Work moving forward, how do you think that'll impact on the disabled workforce?
Well, I think, going back to what I was just saying about the cost of adjustments are not that high, and civil service, like any other organization, should really take a long view about what are they spending the money for. It's an investment and they should do it. If they do it properly, and we know it can be done very efficiently. We have been doing it for 10 years. So any organization really wants to do this, we're happy to help them, to guide them, give them advice on what we know, how it should be done, and more than happy to engage with the civil service departments to do that. I used to work with the Cabinet Office for nearly 10 years. I did the Disability Awards sponsorship because I was getting close to the policymakers as well as the practitioners. I know the intent is there, but unfortunately the practice is not really keeping up because of a complex way the civil service is set up. So hence, but it is doable. And if you reach out, we're more than happy to share our knowledge and experience.
Yeah.
Well done, guys.
And that's my. We got 2 minutes, and I'm not
2 minutes.
We should probably do a bit of an apology for the disappearing presentation.
Yeah. So we got 2 minutes. Any obvious questions? Of course, we can stay on, but if anyone wants to stay on longer, they're more than welcome to.
Can I read the question? Do you help the organisations to apply for disability competent employer license?
For the level 3, we can. Level 1 and 2, you do it yourself. So you have to enter it, and there are set templates you have to fill. But level 3, we can guide you to, or at least audit you to make sure you're approved for level 3.
Yeah, we'll be sending out a recording of this and a resource page with lots of links on it and email addresses. And so when you get that, you can get in touch with us straight away, and we'll answer your questions.
It'll be interesting to see what the transcription translated Tracy's dogs is saying at the end of it. I mean,
or my countdown rendition.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So we have quite a lot of comments we will respond to individually, and hopefully if you have any other questions, you have our contact details, and we're looking forward to seeing you in our next webinar.
In the next one, which is in April. I'm not sure what date it is actually.
What is the
I think it
subject?
is April the 19th.
About
one.
what is the subject?
I think it's the built environment.
Right.
I think
Okay.
built
Good.
environment is the next one. So, you know, we're with Rehan, or it's going to be health and well-being with Mark Howard. But I think the next one is
Okay.
built environment. So how to make your physical environment more accessible.
And thank you again for the audience. And I hope it was useful, and we look forward to seeing you in the future.
For sure.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.